Hey, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Connection Loop podcast. We're super excited to welcome in today Mark Kosoglow. He is the Chief Revenue Officer for Docebo, which is an AI-first learning platform. They really work on improving productivity and improving one of the most important parts, the human potential of it. So Mark has over 20 years of experience leading and scaling high-performing revenue organizations and currently is responsible for unifying the global sales of the company, revenue operations, and revenue enablement teams, while at the same time driving a connected go-to-market motion focused on buyer impact and value creation across the customer lifecycle. Mark is also someone that knows a lot about leveraging AI, data related to it, technology-focused execution, and obviously customer-centric decision-making, which is the most important thing. So, Mark, welcome into the podcast.
Thanks. Is it bad or good that you just made me nervous by telling me what my job was?
You know what? I'll say this. My favorite player of all time is Larry Bird from the Boston Celtics. And he always said, if you're not nervous, in other words, he would say, if you're not nervous, it's not a good sign. You need to be nervous. So I think if we're nervous, we care, right? So
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's nothing nervous about anyway. You're a qualified guy. You know what you're doing. Yeah, so there you go. That's all that matters. Well, listen, thanks for coming in, my friend. Talk to the audience a little bit about kind of your background. How did you get to where you are now? Like what kind of takes you to here?
Yeah. Listen, I don't know how far back you want to go, but there's definitely rumors and family stories of me as an under 10-year-old going to my uncle's house, grabbing all the toys that were from my older cousins and then putting them in a wagon to see if I could trade them with the neighbors for more interesting toys to me.
Wow.
But I've been in sales. I was very lucky. My dad is very successful, but he made me start working at 16. I got a job at a shoe store in the mall. I learned consultative selling by accident. And that's formed like the root DNA of how I do things. So I've been in sales literally every year since I was probably 16 years old.
Yeah.
And I consider myself a student of the game. And so I went to college. I sold. So in high school, I learned how to do consultative selling at the shoe store.
Mm-hmm.
In college, I learned how to deal with rejection when I worked as a credit card telemarketer. I know I don't look that old, but I'm old enough to have done telemarketing back in the day. And then I got my first real job working for a guy that ran a small business, and that's where I learned to multitask and prioritize.
Mm-hmm.
And I got my first outside sales job selling stuff to schools. That's where I learned to really hustle and be organized and create systems and processes and stuff like that. Then I got my first sales leadership job, very early on. I was lucky to do that. That's when I learned how to actually manage people. And then I went to outreach, which was a real accelerant to my career, not just because of the growth of the company, but because I was exposed to the greatest go-to-market minds on the planet on a daily basis. And I'm a learner, so I just asked questions and learned along the way. Yeah. And I went to Catalyst to do post-sales. Tried my hand at entrepreneurship, wasn't really my thing. And now I'm back to being an operator again as a CRO at Docebo.
It's from the days of taking the toys over to Cross to get the best deal. It was all about structure and understanding the end goal and all of that kind of stuff, the processes, right? All right. So in sales, we always talk about, and our audience is big on this, the results. How does how it work? Do we get the deal closed? All that kind of stuff, right? But the journey is obviously a big part of that. But the measurable impact of sales, like what does that look like currently in 2025 compared to the past? I mean, obviously we're all about, you close deals with sales, but you're opening a relationship with a client. What does measurable impact look like for yourself in terms of go-to-market strategies, revenue teams? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think that I don't know if the measurable impact of revenue teams has changed. I think that the noise around that, the ways that you can get there and the efficiency with which you get there is probably changed way more. Like, for example, at Outreach, in the grow at all cost era, where investors wanted you to spend their money. It wasn't irresponsible spending. It wasn't bad business model, which a lot of people want to say like, oh my God, I can't believe that we used to run the business this way. Listen, your job in running a company, especially if you have investors, is to increase investor value. When the market values spending more to grow your revenue, that's what you do. When the market demands that you're more efficient with your spend, that's what you do. It's not bad decision making. It's responding to different market and investor pressures, right? And how to create value for your company. So I would say, like, for me, probably the biggest measurable impact, if I was to label it that, would be the idea that right now you need to find much more efficient ways to grow and to sustain revenue growth than you used to in the past, when it just used to be, well, hire a few more reps or, spend some money here. I think now we need to take a beat, be like, okay, that is an option, but what are other more cost efficiency options that also can deal with the root of the problem? I would say that's the biggest measurable impact change in the last couple of years.
And how about as far as the technology? Because obviously AI is everywhere now, and it's been around for quite a time, but now it's really getting into everything. So from where you're sitting, where is AI currently, and where is it going to go in terms of those efficiencies you talk about with everything you just mentioned?
Yeah, I think we're in a chaotic spot with AI. I think everybody is a little terrified, maybe because of the last generation of really transformative tech, people being a little bit slow to adopt it, people seeing, even though it's a recurring historical pattern, but people seeing the real dominant winners were typically the people that were early in and really learned how to master it and got a competitive advantage from doing that. Like when I was at Outreach, our first 500 to 1,000 customers had a real competitive advantage because they were early adopters. They could do more and had more data than anybody else, right? But when we got to 5,000 or 6,000 customers, maybe not as much of an advantage anymore. And so I think we're feeling that exponentially with AI. And I think, unfortunately, we're feeling it so hard that we're starting to do things with AI that AI is not really ready for. And overall, I think that's a positive because it pushes AI faster to get where we need it to be. But right now, for me, the way that I look at AI is, there's critical functions that a seller needs to do that it's their best attuned to do. There's other foundational functions that maybe AI could do, but if a human doesn't learn it, then they don't understand the advanced stuff that only they can do later. And then there's the monotonous crap that we just don't need to be doing as sellers. Right. I think immediately rush to the monotonous stuff, but don't over-index to the things that are the foundational parts of selling that allow someone to understand how to actually pitch a product or do their research or things like that. And so that they can then do the parts that AI really isn't touching yet, which are the much more advanced things. So that's how I'm viewing it right now. Rush to the easy, monotonous, be careful around the foundational stuff, maybe experiment a little bit, and then protect the extremely valuable human-only things.
I think that's one of the most important parts. I mean, for me, is just it always remind me of just where the human fits into this whole equation, and it's such a large part of everything. Because if AI is being supportive and taking care of those tasks, like you mentioned, that are not, they're in the way almost. It's like slowing down the momentum of whatever that go to market is, sales, whatever. It's just get those out of the way first, but then make sure that it's evolving in a way that's helpful to not only the person using it, but also to the company and the whole vision that lies ahead. Within the past year, let's take 2024 into 2025 now, almost into 2026. What have you seen in general in the world of go-to-market revenue growth teams? What's been an effective strategy, do you think, that's worked pretty well? Because it seems like currently people want to pivot pretty quick on a lot of things if it's not working, probably now more than ever.
Yeah, I think probably the most technology forward thing I've seen that is having the greatest impact on one of my peers is, and I'm going to steal her thunder, but it's the CRO at Vanta, Stevie K. She's one of the, I think, most progressive thinkers around revenue and incorporating technology into the revenue process while protecting the sacred parts, if you will, of what humans do. And this is just an example, and it's segment specific, but let's say that we're taking an average segment. What she does with her SDRs is all of research contains a whole lot of like chains of action that have to happen in a certain way. And if one of those links breaks, the whole chain kind of falls apart. So it's a high risk thing to give to humans. But if we can figure out all right, these are all the inputs. This is how we want to make a decision. If we can get that instructive with a rep, that means that we can get that instructive with AI or an agent. And so what she's done is she's taking her years at Vanta and in GTM and said, all right, I know how I want my reps to think about identifying the accounts and the people that they're going to work today that are their top priorities. And then what she's done is she's now built an engine that when an SDR shows up in the morning, here are the 20 people that you must go after today and why you're going after them and what our hypothesis is on why they might engage or not. Now the humans can go do that work. Whereas I would argue that all of that research to get there was slow, hard. It wouldn't have resulted in 20 new people a day. They would have missed something. It'd have been a whole lot of checklists and go check this, then go over here and do this. Now add this up. Now weight this certain way. That's just too many links in the value chain to be successful. So that's a very effective strategy I've seen is like and I don't think that it touches any of the sacredness of sales. I think that we really should be able to tell our folks, these are the people that have the highest propensity to buy based on all of the data that we have, which we have so much data now.
Yeah. It's like, what's the point of having the data if you can't zero in on what needs to be zeroed in on? Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. And, like that's a top of funnel. I could give you post sales or bottom of the funnel examples as well. But like that one I think is very tactical and approachable for most people to think through.
Yeah. How about the team perspective? It's the one of my favorite movies of all time is Hoosiers, the basketball movie, and Gene Hackman's like, "Hey, my team's on the floor." So when you have these teams, these revenue building teams, what is it about? Like, what's your kind of feel on keeping the team going in the same direction? You know what I mean? The accountability factor, the connectivity with the team. What have you kind of used over the years from your experience that you've seen? I like having these meetings, or we're all focused on this, or what's kind of kept everyone on the same path?
I think that there's kind of three important parts. One is, what is the operational model in which we are developing and creating results? And for example, Jocko Vanderkooj is a good friend of mine from Winning by Design. He has his bow tie model. That's the model that I subscribe to as well. And so like that, what that does is it limits the perspective and the impact of the paradox of choice. And for those of people that don't know, the paradox of choice basically is in the presence of too many choices, I end up not being able to make a choice, right? And the practical example I like to tell people is like, if I give you a closet with 3 pants, 3 shoes, and 3 shirts, you'd walk out saying, this is the dopest outfit. But if I gave you a closet with 300 shirts, 300 pants, and 300 shoes, you'd always walk out thinking, I think I could have picked something doper.
Yeah, so, this is the nobest outfit.
Yes.
There you go.
So the same thing happens to us in business processes and how we're doing stuff is in the absence of a model, what ends up happening is we have a lot of well-intentioned, randomized improvements that create chaos. In the presence of a model, you know what to say yes and no to within the boundaries of that model. And that really makes you laser focused. So that's the first thing. What's your model? Yep. The second thing is once you have a revenue model, there needs to be a single owner, an orchestrator, architect, if you will, of the customer journey. So that is the thread that goes through the model. For me, that's what I call this moments of impact. It's what are the things that you could explain to any layperson of a value that you create that it combines functionality, your product, but that is something that somebody buying it would want. Let me give you an example at Catalyst. We sold a customer success platform. The job was to help with retention and expansion of customer revenue. And guess what? Every CC on the planet would want to say this. I walked in my board meeting last week. I prepared for less than 30 minutes, and I had every account that was at risk, what the current plan in place was to do it, and what's the last thing that we did on that plan and when. Every CCO I know on the planet would want that. Well, that is a moment of impact that we could create at Catalyst. So we marketed on that. We booked meetings with SDRs on that. We sold it for the AEs on that. We handed that over to onboarders. And we had an inventory of 33 of these moments of impact that then now you can see that's the baby that we pass through the whole customer process. Nobody can drop the baby, right? So if we don't have that thread, then people aren't looking and concentrating on the baby. they're looking at other stuff, and that's when you accidentally drop things. So that having that clear thread that unites the entire process is really important. And then the last is your operating rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
What is the series of meetings, check-ins, team meetings, metrics calls, forecast calls? What is the operating rhythm by which you can emphasize, you can reinforce, you can introduce new concepts that are aligned to what you're seeing in the numbers, and causing the model to operate in a way that the thread can have an impact on the company, because there's a regular cadence to how things happen in the company that support those things. So those are the three things that I think that you have to have connection and accountability in a revenue team.
You need the through baby.
Got to have that baby.
The through baby, the through baby. It's got to be right through. That's actually a perfect way to describe that. And the value is there when you describe it as a baby, because like you said, if they're not paying attention to that, they're looking at other stuff, and it kind of falls apart.
Yeah, my daughter is a neonatal intensive care unit nurse, and as soon as the baby comes out, there's a person there that does something with it. Then they pass, if it's at risk, they pass it through this special window where her team takes it. And then one person does this, one person does that. And what ends up happening is you go from a baby that years ago would probably be dying within minutes to a baby that now has not only a chance to live, but will probably live and probably have a normal adulthood. And if we start to think about our customers in those terms, I take somebody that hasn't even heard of us, doesn't even know they have the problem, and now I convert them into an expanding and renewing customer. That's a match rate. That's like, I look at that just like my daughter's neonatal intensive care unit process. Like, nobody can drop the baby, or all of this work that we've done, this whole hospital, all these people here, is all for naught if the baby gets dropped. Don't drop the baby. It's probably a really bad analogy, but
it's an important one though. I mean, people remember, hey, the through baby, don't drop the through baby. I think that's great. So this is a question we ask everybody, and it's always great to have an answer to this one, because a lot of people can relate to this. So in terms of, you look at your career all the way back from when you had the toys next door as a 10-year-old to where you are now, within that entire through line of your life with professional stuff, what's been the mistake that you've made in the professional realm where you're like, oh man, I made a mistake on that and I really learned from that? What would you think? I think a lot of people really appreciate these stories, because over the years when we've been doing the podcast, we've had really good examples of this, and I think a lot of people can learn from it. So for you, what was something that happened where you're like, oh man, I really learned from that?
The story that I tell the most about mistakes I made is when I was a first-time outside rep, and I was selling stuff to schools, and I was a field rep. So I lived in Pennsylvania, and I had like half of the state of Pennsylvania, and I drove between 3 and 5 hours a day between all my stops, right? Well, I came in, I had always been good at sales. And of course, I had a really cool onboarding process, which I could talk to you about. Is crazy. They actually sent 4 people home that had been hired on their first day of onboarding because they didn't complete the required homework. That's how serious this company was about like honoring the process. Yeah, okay. So I did the process, even though I didn't like it and all this, but when I went out there though, I had this immediate success. I signed more contracts faster than anyone had ever thought. Half the company thought I was lying and faking signatures. That's how aggressive it was. Well, of course, when I went to go then make good on those contracts, I'd sign them in a way that gave people an out, and a lot of them canceled, like almost half. So I went from this like, oh my God, this guy's amazing, to, we told you, right? Well, in my second year, I corrected some of that, but going into my third year, I had this very tall Hispanic leader named Rene Ulloa, who's a D1 like offensive lineman, and he was like 6'6", 250. His like finger was as big as my leg. And so I'm at this offsite, and he walks up to me and he pushes me into the wall with his leg-sized finger. And he goes, "Kosoglow, listen to me. Stop trying to be so smart. Do it exactly how I tell you to do it, and you will make more money, and you will do better than if you just keep trying your way. You're too good to be this bad." Basically is what he said. So in a moment fearing for my life, I said, "Yes, sir, Rene Ulloa. I shall do it exactly how you did." Now, he invested in me. I came to his house. He spent time with me. Like,
Yeah.
so I don't want to make it, he supported me and mentored me through this. Well, of course, at the time, what ended up happening is that end of that year, I had my best year ever. And I set myself up to have like an amazing breakthrough year because of what he taught me. So my mistake was, before I understood the processes I was going to deconstruct and make better, you actually have to master those processes to understand how to do that. And no matter how smart you are, you're not going to look at something you've never done before and be better than somebody that's done it for 10 or 15 years in most cases, if they're really, really good. But if you take the tire off of the rack versus trying to chisel a wheel out of a stone, you can move faster and better. And so that's what I tell a lot of people. And that's a huge mistake I made, as I was chiseling wheels out of stone instead of just buying the tire on the rack.
God, that's what a great point. Literally point. Point and a point. Well, Mark, listen, thanks for joining us, my friend. I know you're on a busy schedule today. Any last words before you go for everyone out there in terms of just in general for the rest of the year?
No, listen, if you want to connect with me, I'm on LinkedIn. I haven't posted much the last couple months as I've transitioned to this job, but I'll get back to regular posting here in the next week or so. And then I also host a podcast, 30 Minutes to President's Club, on the Leadership Edition. So that's a way to hear, if you ever want to hear me talk about more stuff like this, those are the two places to hear it.
It's amazing, Mark. Thanks for spending the time, my friend. Great knowledge that you've dropped. And people are out there, remind yourselves of the process, the structure, how everything's interconnected. And don't forget about the through baby. That's what you want to
That's right, baby.
That's right. Mark, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it.
See ya.
Bye, everybody. See you next episode.